Good afternoon, everyone. Hello.
Uh-oh.
We are going to talk about the future of smart home. Let's introduce the panelists first. My name is Ed Wenck. I'm the content director for CEDIA. I have a co-host whenever I do my podcasts, Mr. Walt Zerbe. How are you, Walt?
Good, Ed. How are you?
What is your official title there at CEDIA, Walt?
Senior Director of Technology and Standards.
Terrific.
Fun
That's
stuff.
What's on his business card. All right. And two gents that I've spoken to before on this very stage. First, Michael Sherman from Henri. Michael, welcome. Good to see you again.
Thank you.
And also award-winning integrator and Young Professional of the Year for CEDIA. Well done, sir.
Thank you.
And another award winner is Simon Fulstow, Design and Technical Director for SONA. Hi, Simon. Good to see you again.
Good to see you too.
All right. I know Walt hates the term smart, so this drives him crazy. So let's define what a smart home is. Is it smart or is it just hyper-connected? What do you think, Simon?
I think the clue's in the proper definition of smart. It's giving the illusion of intelligence through connected devices, if you like. And I think that's kind of where, but that for me is a pretty crucial definition, because it isn't intelligent, it's just smart, which is giving the illusion of intelligence.
Okay.
So that's for me. And I think that's where, certainly moving forward, we're going to see more as AI starts to become more of kind of those products and things that as integrators we've had to do to create that intelligence, those products are able to do themselves.
Terrific. Michael, you feel the same way?
Yeah, I'm actually not a big fan either of the smart word. We're trying to bring comfort, entertainment, security, but it needs to be controlled by the user at one point. Mm-hmm. So smart can be a bit scary for users as well. It doesn't have to be too smart. It needs to bring you something, but you don't want to lose control over the technology. So this is something I think, yeah, the word smart isn't really
Shall we
what
settle
we
on
use.
connected home then? Should we do that?
Yeah, connected.
Connected
Absolutely.
home. All right. We'll start with connected home.
Or how
we'll
about
talk
designed?
about the future of connected home and how we make the connected home smart. And let's take it in that direction as far as the crystal ball when we crack into that. So what is the connected home doing well? What's it doing poorly right now?
I think it's giving people access to entertainment, connected media, but also those environmental systems, lighting, heating, at the touch of a button. Mm-hmm. So being able to kind of, as Michael said, the way we approach most of our systems is it's not about trying to sell them technology, it's more about trying to make those spaces that they're living in and they're being in nicer places to be in, more intuitive, more entertaining, sure. Healthier.
Yep.
And I think we've got an incredible, just walking around the halls here, we've got an incredible range of products here that enable us to do that. Mm-hmm. It's our job as integrators to kind of bring all of that together, and it's the onus is on us to make the house connected.
Okay, all right. Are the DIY devices that are still out there, are they still causing you problems, or are they just raising consumer awareness, Michael?
I think it helps the industry as a whole.
Okay, good.
That's what I think.
Good news.
It might not be easy for us to integrate, and sometimes we don't feel comfortable with some products, and we think some other solution might be better adapted to like a whole renovation. But it clearly pushes the word to the customers, mm-hmm. so that then we can communicate and discuss together to find the right solutions. So yeah, in my opinion, it's a good thing. Are
you getting a more educated customer who is asking you for specific things, and in those cases, you have to talk them down, or you take those products, or what?
It's interesting. Yeah. It's so you said educated. I think they get a lot of information from a lot of different advertisements, a lot of different companies, and it's difficult for them to understand everything. So sometimes they focus on one thing. It's important for us to have this discussion so that we can build something together that fits to their needs.
All right, terrific.
Certainly more aware, I think, through the IoT type devices. Yeah, so we very often get clients who've maybe got some hue in one room, and then they're building a 10 or 15,000 square foot house that think that hue is still an applicable product for them. Mm-hmm. So there's a discussion there as to, well, we can still give you some of that functionality and those features you've had, but hue or a product like that is maybe not the best solution for that project.
All right, the talk is called The Future of Smart Homes. We're going to crack open the crystal ball here, and as we know, YouTube is forever, so we'll be able to look back 6 months and realize how wrong we were about all of this stuff. So I just want to warn you. going in because I could already see the comments. No, they didn't get that right either. So let's start with user interfaces. Is voice living up to its potential yet? Where are we going next?
I think for us, I think Michael made a really good point about it. It's still important that the user feels in control. And I think we've had some experiences where people are just not comfortable with voice control yet. My wife is a brilliant example. She will not talk to Alexa. She just is not comfortable with that concept of speaking to a computer, a thing that doesn't really have any tangible presence, if you like.
No face, no eyes,
so,
no nothing.
So I
it's
think
weird.
there's a comfort level there, and I do think that to a certain extent it can be a bit gimmicky. For me, there's something tangible about going and pressing a button and making you know it's tactile. You've done something. That button can have some feedback. But having said that, my eldest daughter has autism, and so we have Alexa at home, and we have some very simple scripts set up that we don't really use these days. But when she was younger, we had some simple scripts set up so we could ask Alexa to play Peppa Pig, and it would turn on the TV, switch to Kaleidoscope, and play Kaleidoscope. Because if our hands were full dealing with her, if she was having an issue and was upset, we couldn't pick up a remote or grab a keypad to turn on the TV for her. So there's some, I think, kind of interesting. It's about having that conversation with your client, exactly what are their unique kind of situations, what issues have they got, and then building that around it. But for me, as a wholesale kind of replacement for user interfaces, voice, I don't know if it'll ever get there personally. That's my... So,
looking at consumer sentiment, it's not about privacy and security. It's more about just the clunkiness or of the interface.
Yeah, for us personally, we really haven't had any clients who have kind of expressed concern about security or where that voice or where that information is going. It's more just usability. Like, do I like using it? Certainly for us.
So, Michael, do you think we'll ever see the actual genesis of the no UI concept where gesture, looking at something, will actually trigger a scene or what have you? Is that viable?
It's interesting. You see gesture to control?
Sure.
I don't know. I think it's always difficult. You know, people have habits, and as you said, it's replacing some of those habits is very difficult. Talking to one's house, I don't know, I don't get a lot of requests.
Okay.
And even for this kind of request. So we actually tried to do something in our offices with some bracelet for control gesture and everything. And if you get really into it, you realize that it's not that easy. And how do you manage it, and how do you control everything? You know, it's easy to know how you control lights, how you control your TV, how you control your audio. When you come to an interface where you can do everything, voice or movement, and you get into detail how you're going to do that, it's actually not that simple. And it might be more difficult for people to actually get to use those systems. So it's always interesting to look at those products and to try them, but the basic is it needs to be simple to use. Whatever the technology, it might look amazing, but if it's difficult to use, there's no point for the client.
All right. How much of your stuff involves lighting?
Pretty much every project that we do.
Yeah. And we've seen, obviously, a lot of advancements in lighting with the smart bulb, the temperature control, et cetera, et cetera. What do you see happening next in the lighting and shading universe?
I think it's really the control of the colour temperature, so this more kind of biophilic, human-centric type lighting. I still think it's very hard for us to control that naturally. There's a huge amount of programming that goes on in the background for that to appear natural, and so we've got a project working on at the minute that has a lot of tunable white lighting in it. But in the residential sector, there aren't that many products that are actually dynamically mapping what's happening outside and are able to follow that inside. There's obviously some products in the commercial sector that do that. Mm-hmm. But so for me, it's the progression of those systems coming on that are able to talk to those tunable white systems and map them without a huge amount of programming and configuration from us in the background.
All right. Walt?
When you're talking about next steps, are you starting to see a trend towards personalization and being able to do control for different people in the house and give them different needs? How are you viewing that going?
sorry, different.
For different
So
people.
when you, mom wants certain things, dad wants certain things, child needs other things. So
How do you split the difference?
personalization
Yeah.
of control and the experience versus just a holistic look at the entire place.
Specifically with lighting or
Anything.
across the whole
So I guess you answered my question.
I think, well, I mean, our approach with, when we have initial client meetings, we try and ask to speak to as many members of the family as possible. So we'll always certainly try and do it with husband and wife. If there are older children, we'll try and involve them in the conversation. I suppose it kind of, I have young children, so it's naturally as part of our process we're thinking about that. But it kind of, I guess that a lot of that comes back to its user interface, how are you controlling it, and that again comes back to this conversation. But it's about choosing the right interface for the particular task. Right. If it's turning on lights, that needs a different interface and a different user than if it's turning on the TV or if it's setting the alarm system. Okay. So it kind of comes to what CEDIA is all about, which is that listening to the client and personalising it to the. In terms of lighting, we're probably not. We tend to do a lot of lighting personalisation, lighting scenes in bedroom spaces, and that. So the husband may have a different evening scene than his wife. I'd like to see that us have some more tools to start integrating tunable white and human-centric type lighting without us having to do a huge amount of work, which is what we currently have to do. For that to happen naturally, you tell the house where it is in the world, and it knows what time sunset is, and it to automatically transition those changes.
Let's talk about HVAC and that and controlling that stuff. The smart thermostat was the machine learning thermostat. It was a huge step forward. So there's other elements that are coming into play now. Air quality, people are getting concerned about. Are you seeing demand for that, and where do you see that headed?
We don't get a lot of demand for that, but it's definitely a trending topic.
Okay.
I think wellness is something we hear a lot now for different systems to bring even more comfort and wellness in the home. I've seen some suppliers, but it comes from commercial application. I think it's more developed in hotels. They get used to this kind of technology, and it usually takes some time for it to be adapted to the residential market. It cannot be the same big system. It needs to be controllable easily. So it will probably come in the soon future. But for now, to me, it's more commercial product for now.
So I would imagine a show like this is pretty helpful for you if the trend line has been, it starts off in the commercial or hospitality environment and then trickles down to the residential environment. Eventually, you're able to get a handle on what is happening in the commercial and hospitality world with a show like this. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's interesting to see. It's funny because we started hospitality, 6-7 years ago. Okay. And the first thought that you have is, it's a hotel, it looks like a residence, but it's very different. The technology is very different, and knowing the common areas and the approach that the management of the hotel have, because we talk about wellness at home, but it's important for the management of a hotel to have their clients feeling good in their hotel, have a good experience. Technology is a part of that. And in the common areas, you have different technology. So, of course, it's very interesting for us to get insight from this sector and to bring that to residential.
Sure. I'd imagine a big segment for especially higher-end clients, obviously, is security, surveillance, those kinds of systems, access control. So what kind of advancements are you seeing coming down the pike in that whole universe, that segment?
Yeah, there's some incredible solutions out there for our higher kind of end clients. They're more going down the more physical security kind of route. So once you've put a certain amount of detectors on doors and windows, and you've got a certain amount of detectors internally to sense motion, and if you've got a certain number of cameras up that are all monitoring motion and things, if people are still, I think those technologies are going to continue to improve, and AI is obviously going to make the recognition of objects and people. That's just going to get simply better and better and better. But I don't really see any fundamental changes in terms of a new product category, if you like, on that side. I think it's more evolution of those products, and obviously that ties into, we're seeing, I don't want to jump ahead here, but cyber security and that side of it. It's more that side of it that clients are kind of we're comfortable, if you like, currently with the products that we have access to provide physical security to a property, and then electronic monitoring, visual monitoring of a property.
I'm glad you mentioned that. I'm sure you're also hearing this, Michael, from your clients about not just physical security, but cybersecurity and what kind of concerns they have, right?
Yeah, of course, they're more and more concerned.
Sure.
We had a shift some years ago. Everything is controlled over IP, so there is a real concern about that.
Yeah.
And it's interesting. We have this discussion with the client because every system can be hacked. So it's a question of how you feel as well. Sometimes it's a question of psychology as well. So we might have some alarm systems that are disconnected from the automation and the IP system, just because the client feels more comfortable with it. I think in terms of security, you have a lot of innovations, but it's about how comfortable people feel with it. Opening a door with your phone, and people are wondering, what if I lose my phone, or this kind of stuff. So you have a lot of technology, and then it's how people respond to it. Mm-hmm. So we usually, it's not like we push everything forward, we explain to the client, but he needs to be very comfortable with the technology he has at home.
Okay, Walt?
So we talked a lot about the convenience side of it. How are you seeing a play on like energy management or data collection and using that data to help a property or help a property manager control their building? Are you seeing a trend to be more involved in that side of things?
I think so again, we work in hospitality.
Yeah.
It's really useful.
I mean, right.
It's really useful because they can adapt the system to how the clients use it. I think at home, it's more driven by the client itself than the technology alone. Once again, I think people want to be in control, and they don't want something to change from a day to day because some AI decided that now the lighting needs to be like this or like that.
Right.
So we have discussions with our client. We follow them after we deliver the project, and it's more driven by them than by data collected.
Okay.
All right.
I think on energy management, we don't really do any commercial. It's all residential, relatively high-end residential, and our clients are just not really interested in seeing that data. It's kind of so it becomes one of those features or functions that we don't really push as such, because they might look at it for the first week they're in the house and it's cool to see how much energy, but they're not making any decisions off the back of that. They're not changing their habits or how they use the system because of that. So again, it comes back to this kind of, are you selling something because it's offering true value for that particular client, or are you offering it just because it's a feature that you want to kind of tick off and say you've done, and that's an important part of it, I think.
Let's talk about leak detection and water quality. Is there an awareness there with your clientele, and is there demand?
Currently for us, I would say not. I just don't think they're aware of products. Obviously, people like Hero are doing some incredible things with their products. I think the quality of the environment generally is something that is increasingly get more, so whether that's water quality, air quality. I think in the UK, certainly, the way that we heat our buildings is very different from other countries, potentially. So having a centrally managed or central air system is just not the case in the UK at all. So centrally filtering and treating air is quite difficult. For me, there's a huge kind of opportunity for companies to do improve water quality and air quality.
Right. Are you seeing any demand, Michael, for any of this stuff?
Not that many, to be honest.
Okay,
but
that's fine.
What's interesting is that it might be a topic where we are not the specialists. I like sometimes to know that there are things that other people know better and that we have to work together. When it comes to regulation, HVAC, air quality, you have some people that are really trained for that. I mean, we all come from somewhere, whether it's electricity, audio, video, or stuff like that. So it's a discussion to have with other industry, and it would be good to have more discussions so that we can together create an atmosphere that is good for the country.
Right. We had this discussion yesterday when we were talking about home theater design on the main stage, and it's interesting that there's a trend in the United States away from the dedicated home cinema toward the media room. Are you seeing this in the UK and in France? We'll start with the UK.
I'd probably say it's almost the other way for us.
Really?
Everyone's kind of different. I suppose everyone's business is different and different clientele. But for us, we're actually lean towards a more dedicated space where you literally, it's a room that you go to specifically to escape modern world, if you like, and turn your phone off and enjoy a film or a TV show or something. So we still do a lot of media kind of multifunction spaces, but we are seeing a demand for that more dedicated space. So yeah, I'd say it's the other way around.
Michael?
I think it really depends on where you're working. I mean, in Paris, the space is quite expensive.
Yeah.
So you wouldn't have a dedicated home theater.
Right.
So it will be more rooms that can transform in a home cinema, just because it doesn't make sense to have a whole room for that.
Distributed audio, seeing any new products or any new interest in some maybe higher resolution stuff or what?
A general kind of change over IP, which is obviously the way everything's going. So
great.
I think certainly within the next year, I don't think there'll be many people who are kind of actively pushing and developing just analog audio distribution. It all seems to be going to some of the big manufacturers. Obviously, a lot of that has been pushed, talked about earlier, from the commercial side of it, and there is a discussion as to, well, do you need IP audio distribution in a house, in a residential project? Kind of it's this whole kind of balance of, are you doing it because it's genuinely the best solution, or are you doing it simply because that's kind of what everyone's doing? But I think just the way that technology has gone, generally we are moving towards everything being IP-based, but that then just forces you to look at other things like cybersecurity and like the network. So it's
Walt?
I wanted to ask you too, both of you, pain points. So since we're going down on the audio and we're going down on the home theater, what are your pain points that you're finding? Like, are you finding difficulties managing media for people so they can watch the shows they want to watch, or is that are we having problems in that space, and is that becoming a harder thing for you guys to deal with?
You mean
finding TV shows, finding movies? This app supports this show, this station supports that show, this is broadcast in this quality, that's available in this quality. Personally, we've had a lot of discussions on it. We think it's getting pretty messy.
I think for video, we found it's probably in a better place. Something like Apple TV is able to consolidate a lot of products, but then you've got issues with maybe the Apple TV app doesn't support the highest resolution that streaming service supports, which the Smart TV native app does. But in terms of just physically getting access to and seeing that content, it being in one place, for video, I'd say that's in a reasonable place. Audio for us is generally a bit messier. If a client says to you, well, look, all the family uses Apple Music, that's a bit of a pain before we even start. Or say sometimes I'm going to use Apple Music, but then my daughter uses Spotify, and that for us is we've struggled to find a really reliable, really robust product or solution that brings all of those together into one place. Yeah.
Right.
Michael, are you getting questions about 5G?
5G? Not yet. Not yet, actually.
Really?
I'm sorry to disappoint everyone when you ask me a question.
That's an illegal.
Not at all.
Because you're asking a lot if we get requests. But what I think is we don't sell technology to people who ask for technology.
Very good.
We're part of a project where it's important to bring, as I said, comfort and security and entertainment through technology. But I rarely have discussions with my clients about, a speaker's frequency or this kind of stuff. So the technology is not the main point. And actually, because that's like one solution, one protocol. But what's important is the result you get, not the technology behind it. And I agree with what you just said before, is we see like IP distribution, and it's been pushed to us by a lot of suppliers, you should do IP.
Okay.
Compared to HD-based T, for example, if we talk about video.
Yep.
What you install just need to be reliable and to bring what the client expects. He push a button, he has video. He doesn't care what's behind. So if you bring a lack of reliability, even if it's the latest technology, I don't think that's the good choice. So, and we discuss about new innovation for security and everything. But once again, it's what does a client want and how do you bring it that is very reliable and very easy to use. So, no.
So
5G,
let me
I didn't
reframe
get.
the question for you guys. How then do you see 5G impacting what you do, if at all?
I mean, we do have some clients who are in more remote areas.
Okay,
so
fair enough.
Who may only have, which seems, I mean, I have these conversations with clients and think, we're in 2020 and we have clients who have wired internet connections to the house of under 4 or 5 meg. Like, it's just crazy. So I think for clients like that where we've put in 4G solutions for them with 4G routers and stuff, that has transformed their kind of entertainment and connectivity. So 5G I think offers a huge, but it comes down to infrastructure again. I mean, I can drive down the motorway in the UK and lose 4G signal. In fact, lose signal altogether on like a major motorway. So as with all these technologies, it's always depending on the kind of underlying stuff that supports it. Gotcha. And certainly in the UK, if we can't even do 3G reliably and consistently across the whole of the country, what is that? So in the centre of London, yeah, I'm sure we're going to have brilliant 5G coverage. It'd be fantastic, but in rural Cheshire, which is where we do a lot of work, we don't even have reliable 3G and 4G. Do we really want to be putting in systems that are going to be dependent on that before the infrastructure? So it's about making sure that that's in place first before we even start having those conversations or recommending that as a solution to our clients.
Terrific. We're about out of time. Does anybody have any questions for the panel at all? Anybody have a question for... Yeah, go ahead, please.
What was your name again? Sorry.
Simon.
Simon?
I'm Timon.
Hi.
Simon.
Talking about how important it is to feel... You understand me?
It's just very quiet, so I could...
You were talking about, at the beginning, about how important it is to feel control about your systems and your smart home as a user. For example, when you use voice control. And I'm really busy with voice control and even video control in public spaces. For example, at an airport or a train station. So what is the difference for a user who is in his home using voice control and compared to be in a public space and use voice control? Is he both, or is he in both spaces? Does he still want to have control in the same way, or is it different? Is there a difference between those two cases? Do you understand the question?
I think so. I would guess I would struggle with the idea of voice control out in public spaces simply from there's a lot of ambient noise going on, so a system that's going to be able to dial in and actually respond accurately to that. And then there's a privacy issue with that. If that's that your voice is being recorded publicly, where's that going, what's doing with it? I think that at home, which most of our projects are residentially, again, it's just for me, it's probably that personal comfort thing. When you're out in the public space, you're always speaking to people, you're interacting with people and speaking to them, that kind of, that voice kind of conversations you have with people. Whereas in your home, that's a very private and personal space. For me, the kind of idea that you are talking to this machine that is then going and doing things in your home, it's a very different kind of...
That's a different relationship.
A different relationship, really yeah. And I think that kind of feeling of control, like once you speak to something, if I've then changed my mind or I want to do something differently, can I just kind of say, actually, forget that, I don't want to do that, I want to do something different. When you're pressing buttons, for me, it feels like you've got a lot more direct control over that. I don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah, okay, great, fantastic.
Thank you.
We are literally out of time. I guess the top line takeaway is as all these systems and all these content choices get more and more complex, your big challenge is to make this as frictionless as possible.
Absolutely, yeah. Michael's summed it up really well there, is that we don't try and talk to our clients about technology, really. It's about Michael kind of framed it perfectly, but it's about what technology can do for you. How can that technology make your home life and your life generally a better place? So, yeah.
Great work, guys. Simon Fulstow of SONA, Michael Sherman from Henri. A round of applause for our panelists today, if you don't mind. Thanks very much. CEDIA.net for more info on us.